This is the InWin Explorer, and it's weird. I'm just gonna say it. InWin wanted us to build in it. They said, hey, you can do a review on it, just to give us your thoughts as you're building. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be anything formal. They're not paying for this, so you're gonna hear my objective thoughts, but I have my reservations because, well, just take a look at the product photos. It looks like a crayon box. I don't really know how to describe it. They also offer a beige version of the Explorer, which I think is a huge throwback to like the old 90s compact days. Maybe you'll like that just for the nostalgia, but this colorful one, I had them send this one because it was the more polarizing, I think, and I'm just not all sure how this is gonna work out. So yeah, maybe stick around for the ride. Stay with me.
Be Quiet Silent Wings 4 offer incredible performance and no compromise silence thanks to 6-pole motors and minimal vibration. A new blade arrangement was engineered from scratch for extraordinarily high air pressure, and an all-black sleek design ensures they look fantastic, pun intended, in any PC build. Choose between 120 and 140mm variants, PWM or not, multiple mounting corners, and Pro models for an integrated 3-phase speed switch. Wrap it all up with a 5-year manufacturer's warranty, and you've got yourself one formidable fan. Learn more about Be Quiet Silent Wings 4s by clicking the link below.
Let's jump right into it, shall we? I've got the box open, and well, you can see we've been greeted with other boxes. I was under the impression this was all going to be assembled in the box, but I guess not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is all assembled and there's just extra little bits and pieces here. This is pretty bold. That looks like the front panel. So yeah, definitely not totally assembled out of the box. Holy guacamole, look at those colors. This looks like Lego. I don't, and then there's yellow in there. It's almost like we received different pieces for different SKUs of this case. This is really, and then we got white in here as well. Golly, yeah, this is the Crayola build, folks. I hope you like it. Here's every piece you'll get in the box. And yeah, there's a lot here. It does look like these side panels are comprised of tempered glass, which I'd expect nothing less from InWin, if I'm being honest. They are a bit odd in their shape, and they're mounted to these like plastic tabs that are colorful. So blue on this side, and then the tabs on this panel are red. It's just getting weirder by the second. It does look like we get, let's see, a few fans. 1 fan, 2 fan, 3 fans, all right, and then a little hub here as well, looks like. So that's nice. A lot of weird cases don't come with any fans at all, just because they're so niche, they don't even bother sinking extra stuff into them, but it's nice to have RGB fans, and they're InWin branded fans, the AL120 it looks like, so that's cool. I'm not gonna lie though, I am just a bit intimidated by all of this. This looks like a freaking nightmare. Well, let's get started then. Now I'm assembling this case on the floor because I feel like this is best suited for assembly down here. There's a lot of parts to sift through on a small desk. And look, I know it seems like I'm giving this case a hard time. I mean, it's kind of annoying having to assemble everything. I have fun with it in the beginning, but it always just kind of drags out because you really want to get to the build, right? The meat of the PC, and the case is just the first step. But it is different. It's interesting. I like that InWin's thinking out of the box here. And if you don't like just the weird kind of flashy style that they have. Again, they offer the beige version or just plenty of other more mainstream style InWin cases out there. So it's not like this is the only thing they're offering. I'm just being a bit critical because, well, it's so weird. Let's see, we've got the feet worked in, and we've got these little rubber pads to put there, just little sticky bits. And back on the desk we go here. I've got the power supply cable fed through. Now, power supply placement is pretty interesting here. So it's gonna be mounted up front with this bracket here that's secured to the chassis via 2 screws, and it's also held mechanically in place by a couple legs. So it's very sturdy, it's not going anywhere. This cable is going to run over to your power supply. I'll tuck excess up top, and yeah, I mean, it's different. You know, the more I build in this, the more I realize, I'm not really building in it yet, I'm just putting it together. The more I build the case, the more I feel inclined to give this to my son. He's now almost 3, actually his birthday's in a couple weeks, and This just, I mean, I don't mean it in an insulting way. I know InWin knows this, but this feels like the perfect case for a child because of the color scheme. It's very, I think it looks like a giant Lego or a giant, I don't know, something. That looks like a Lego on top for sure. And I showed him this case. He walked in a second ago and he really liked the colors. So I think we'll end up putting his first ever computer build, the official first build he'll own, even though he's not really going to be doing much with it yet because he's only 3, in this case. And we're going to build in it ourselves with just standard hardware we usually use. But I do want to put together something pretty cool for him, and I think it'll be a fun experience for the both of us. So yeah, his first case, I think the colors work. We'll see. A few more panels to install, and then we will get the 3 RGB fans in here. And at that point, we can go ahead and throw the rest of our hardware inside the Explorer. I've got to say, so far, assembly hasn't really been all that complicated. I'm kind of impressed with how easy it is. They use pretty much all the same screws. It all just kind of fits together nicely. QC's great. Not that I should be surprised, this is InWin we're talking about here. We're of course going to mount one of these fans at the rear for adequate exhaust. And we got the remaining 2 fans situated up top. Now, realizing that this case is not optimized necessarily for airflow, we're going to have to make a few concessions. First up, these 2, what would be exhaust fans up top are actually set to intake, and that's because this is the only place, this top panel here, where an integrated dust filter exists. And I don't want it getting dusty in here long term. Now, if you noticed earlier, the Explorer case only supports ITX motherboards, which is rather limiting, but it's a small footprint case, so it makes a bit of sense. This is a B550 Phantom Gaming ASRock motherboard. We're going to pair this with probably a 5500X, and we'll just stick either the stock cooler on or a low profile Noctua cooler. I think the stock cooler is going to look a bit better because there's really no brown in the case. Easy does it. Nice and gently. And retention clip down. Our case has quite a bit of white in it, so I'm gonna go with some Crucial Ballistics DDR4 with RGB. Now we can get the platform situated. I totally overlooked the fact that we're gonna need to lock this down. I'm gonna need like a shorter screwdriver. Not a lot of clearance here. This is cutting it pretty close to this rear fan. It is what it is. It shouldn't hurt anything. So we'll get this tightened down and then we'll start cable managing, I guess. And then we've got to connect front I/O as well. I'm really starting to notice how little cable management space there is here. I mean, you've got a ton of empty space. I should say it's not bad for cable stuffing, but in terms of making it look clean, it's pretty much impossible. I've got just this wad of cables here that I've used electrical tape to keep somewhat under control, and that's super not like me. I don't like doing stuff like this unless I have no choice. And then you've got your rat's nest of front I/O wiring that I don't know what to do with because there's nowhere to tie anything down. You've got these cutouts down here. I suppose you could route some things underneath this, but it doesn't really make sense because this blue plate is so thick that any wire you run through here is going to be touching the desk, and I really don't like that. So I'm just going to leave it as is for now. We'll put the power supply in, and then we'll get the graphics card in and fire things up. I'll see what I can do about this, but I make no promises. Let's see here. Definitely a tight squeeze, especially with the fans mounted up top. You have to remove the bracket to get the power supply on here, and then actually, I mean, that's not too bad. I've got the fan facing out, even though there's literally like a solid front panel on the other side of it. There is some space for the unit to breathe, but I don't expect the power supply is going to be like sweating anyway. This build won't be lasting very long. It'll be torn down shortly after this video goes live, regardless. So we'll take 2 screws here and tighten that bracket back down. Get this stuff wired up next. 24 pin. Yeah. Get in there. 8-pin EPS under all this mess. That rhymed. And the last piece of the puzzle, this colorful iGame white RTX 3070. This is one of my favorite 3070s in the entire 3070 lineup from any brand. It looks so good. Cooling's actually really good as well on this. You can see dual 8 pins here. Just an all-around fantastic flashy looking card. The white's going to blend nicely with the white chassis. We'll just need to remove a few things back here and she'll slot right in. Let's make sure these cables are out of the way. Wow, this is actually a tighter fit than I thought it would be. I don't just want to like press it into the slot. Okay, there we go. Small issue with alignment. I think that was my fault, not the cases. There we go. Okay, and then we'll tighten things down. Wow, that looks really good. The white on this shroud almost perfectly matches the white in the Explorer. This is, golly, these are 2 peas in a pod. And now we have supplemental power. Here we are then, for the most part, finished. And I feel like there's, I'm just gonna say, I feel like the case is a bit incomplete. Obviously we don't have the left and right side panels on. That might help. I'll show you how to install those in a second. They're toolless, which is cool. But, you know, like when you look at the top here, there's just something about this that makes it feel incomplete to me. The front looks okay. They've got this weird gap on one side. And then the bottom, I don't really know what's going on down here or why they have this mesh. I mean, I guess you could mount more fans down here, or like maybe you could flip-flop things. It does look like it's reversible, but I don't know. It's kind of a gimmick. It looks fine from this side. I mean, it looks like a decent ITX bridging on micro ATX volume-wise PC. But then you flip it around, and then you notice that there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that is just kind of chilling in here, and it's because there's really no way to manage cables. So you've got these cutouts. I don't really know what the cutouts are for though, because you can't route cables underneath them. Again, you're gonna run cables right into your desk. There's no clearance apart from the half an inch or so that these feet stick out to route cables underneath the case. So maybe I'm missing something. I looked over the manual a few different times and I couldn't really see how they were taking advantage of them. Maybe it's just to run zip ties through. Nonetheless, I feel like they could have done a better job with cable management. And maybe, again, that's just not the target market for this case. My son's not gonna care. But as someone who's obviously been building PCs for quite a while, most of you have as well, it's gonna leave a bit to be desired. So know that going into it. The Explorer is definitely different. And in that regard, InWin's done a pretty stellar job. I do think though that there are much more sensible cases from InWin currently available. So unless you want something that looks absolutely crazy for the heck of it, I'd suggest going with those instead. Just gonna be blunt. There's one thing we haven't checked though, and that's price. I like to save it for last because, well, my initial impressions I think matter. And seeing as though I just built in this, I have some preconceived notions about what this should cost. And if it misses the mark, I mean, that's the final nail in the coffin, right? So here we go. Let's click USA. And, ooh, $119, say 120 bucks. That is a bit steep. It's not egregiously overpriced, but when you're competing with a whole lot of case out there for $120, I don't know, I feel like the sweet spot for this would be under 100. I mean, if you could somehow convince the average builder to choose this case over a conventional rig, I mean, any hope of that went out the door when you priced it over $100. I think 80 bucks is a sweet spot. It's built well. The quality of materials is impressive. It's not a cheap case by any means. It doesn't feel cheap, but yeah, you're paying that unique tax. It's a bit pricey here. I also want to point out that I did have to hack this case up a bit, which is never something that I look forward to with a brand new rig. Let's see, take this off, and all right, so my problem was I had these fan cables and I didn't want them just hanging down on the other side of the chassis. It wouldn't have looked clean. I tried to just zip tie these cables around this red mesh thing, whatever it is, part of the frame, and it prevented the dust filter from sitting flush with the white edges. As a result, I needed to take, I could take a Dremel, I took my wire cutters, and I just cut little grooves in the red, the little red frame. And I did that all the way down so that these cables could sit recessed in them, and so that, so that this could sit nicely on top and not jut out like it was before. So it is what it is. I think InWin should add maybe a couple more wire channels up top, assuming you're gonna be mounting fans up here, which I don't know why you wouldn't, because there's really nowhere else to mount fans that I can tell. To mount these side panels, you wanna make sure that these yellow little push pins here are pulled out. You'll hear a snap for each one. Then you can slide the legs underneath into place, and then to lock the panels, you just push down, so you hear a loud click. for each of these yellow pins, and there you go. Rock solid, again, tempered glass, not acrylic, so it feels premium. I also love that it's not tinted, so you can see everything inside, although maybe that's a bad thing for the other side of the case because, well, it doesn't look as pretty back here, so yeah. And in case you were wondering, this last piece here, you can actually swap out with the current white one, just a couple screws, and then it clips in at the bottom. I think the yellow is a bit aggressive, but I'm not going to complain about having a few extra options. Here's a quick mock-up to give you an idea. It's, yeah, it's a tad much for me. It might not be for you. When it's all said and done, powered up, ready to go, the RGBs are just kind of set to the rainbow pattern now. I think that works with a case this colorful. I mean, it's not ugly. I don't think it looks ugly. It just looks different. It's an eye catcher. It's gonna make whoever walks into your office or your bedroom or whatever double take. They're gonna look at this once and then they're gonna have to look at it a second time to make sure what they thought they saw is in fact what they saw. There's a computer in this thing? What even is this? It's gonna get, you know, conversation started. If that's what you're wanting, I don't think the Explorer is a bad choice. For $120, yes, it could be a lot cheaper. There are cases that are competing with this that are not even in the ITX space. And ITX is limiting in and of itself. You got smaller motherboards, limited PCIe expandability. It's going to be a bit more expensive depending on what you opt for. The power supply that's supported here is ATX standard size, so that's nice. Just don't get a very long one. That's definitely not going to fit. I feel like the use of space here could have been optimized a bit more. I think InWin could have shrunk this down quite a bit because we have a ton of empty space behind this graphics card. You can fit a tower-style CPU cooler to the platform in this rig, but I think they still could have worked this out a bit better than they did. They wanted to include as much hardware support as possible, and that came at the expense of having a much larger than I think is what typically is desirable ITX case. That's my closing thought. It's weird. There are quite a number of compromises. This wouldn't be my first choice, not even my second, but I am grateful that InWin sent it out. I'm glad that they were fans of the weird PC case miniseries here on the channel. They wanted to send something they thought fit the bill. It's definitely weird, it's quirky, and it's cool in its own right. I'm glad InWin's experimenting a bit more, and it's not like they don't already have viable, excellent cases on the market, so they can afford to venture into unknown territory like this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You can find this InWin Explorer case linked in the video description, along with all the other computer parts you see here if you want to build something very similar to this for whatever reason. I will try my best to follow up in a separate video with a build in this case, an actual build that we will keep, featuring my 3-year-old. I think he'll be 3 by the time we do that, because again, he's turning 3 pretty soon. So maybe if I can get him to focus for an hour or two, I'll get him in here and see how much of it he can build himself. He really likes the case, like I said, and he's amped about having something like this in his room someday. So we'll see how that goes, but I'll leave it there. Again, let me know in the comment section below what you think about this, because my oh my, it is definitely polarizing, and I really don't know what else to say about it. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up, that'd be appreciated. Consider subscribing if you have not already, and I will catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.